Namaste and welcome to the Healing Mirror podcast. My name is Soraya Saraswati, and here I'm offering discussions, global satsangs, and interviews with spiritual teachers, philanthropists, and awakened and inspirational humans. So let's do our meditation. Just allowing the body to be comfortable. And pay particular attention to all the joints in the body. The ankles, the knees, the hips, the wrists, elbows and shoulders, the spinal joints, the cervical joints in the neck. And just allow all those parts of the body to soften. Feel the weight of gravity, which affects the physical. Just let the jaw relax. Let the eyes relax. Allow the abdomen to soften. Allowing that sense of still relaxation in the body. And then tuning into the ground of being, to that sense of aliveness. The substratum of consciousness. This field which everything appears in, whether it be object or subject, and is made of this one underlying consciousness or ground of being. Notice that that field is expansive, limitless. It includes everything. It is unchanging, unborn, always and ever available. And then coming back, finding that thread of breath that moves through the body. but not losing touch with the fact that this body is consciousness itself. And this is really why we meet, to remind and to remember that while on one level we live in a physical world, that within this physical world there will always be fluctuation. We will never feel completely and utterly loved and beloved. There will always be something that feels like it's missing. And last week I talked about the dark night of the soul, when we have awakened to the sense of love and that consciousness of love and peace. Yet we're not there yet. There's a calling, a sense of yearning deep in our heart. But the Vrittis of the mind, the mental patterns, the craving, the aversion, the preferences, the fears, are too powerful to allow us to abide in peace, to abide in love, to abide in this sense of being, which is innately love and peace. So what do we do when the mental fluctuations, these vrittis, which are made up of the yogic kleshas, as I mentioned, the fear of death, the craving and the attachment and the aversion or the pushing away, and that lack of recognition of I am presence and the divinity that pervades all that is. And in ancient times, people would retreat to ashrams or to monasteries to pray, to do deep practices, to do long silent retreats with vipassana, perhaps. And they withdrew from society to do these practices in order to know thyself, in order to become one with God, to use that more religious terminology. But now there is a great awakening, it seems, and an understanding which is more available to the everyday person, which of course we all are anyway, some just in robes. So that humanity now has an opportunity to awaken to the ground of being and still be an active part of their community, offering service perhaps in some way. Yet to calm these vrittis, these disturbances, these patterns that hold us in reactivity and disallow us the ability to remain on the frequency of the divine radio, as Gandhi put it. Times of stillness and quietness, observation through awareness, and deep inquiry, such as we do here in Satsang, is something that can be invaluable. And the sharing of that is invaluable as well. Even when we have felt that deep, peaceful presence, there can be times, because we have a human body, where we fall back into old reactive patterns. And all that's required here is a noticing of that, a seeing through of that, a recognition that it is simply an old pattern, and noticing that there perhaps is no truth there. It is simply pulling us away from that peaceful presence and that sense or ground of being. So taking time in silence, whether that's in a meditation practice, whether that's simply going for a walk, whether that's drying the dishes and doing so with an openness, whether that's simply observing our reactivity in our daily life. All these can be very powerful ways to allow a crack for the light to get in, to allow a gap in the mental patterning so that we become reminded time and time again of the vastness and completeness of consciousness without an object. So I open to our small group here tonight. If anyone would like to share anything or ask a question, we have an opportunity perhaps to go a little deeper and slip through into that beautiful open stream that's ever available, always here. That space of open, loving, compassionate heart, where all is welcome. This week we ordered some signs a little while ago to put on the gate entrance to our home, and one is the ancient Greek, which I'll let Terry tell you about, and the other symbol is just the Om symbol. We put those up this week. It was quite interesting observing the whole of putting something up. because it wasn't quite in the center, so it needed to be taken down and put up again. Terry put it up and then he went, "Is that right?" And I said, "Well, actually it's slightly to the right." He said, "I want it to be right." I said, "Well, we can get used to it there if you like." No, so he decided to take it down, and then of course there was a chip in it. And it was Jaya and I had to sort of stand and go, "Okay, that's the center." And we got it in the center in the end, and it, of course it's got a couple of chips, but we see the perfection in that imperfection. And it reminded me of many years ago. I bought an old house, and I did it up before I moved in with my children. I was a single parent, and I had all the floor carpets ripped up and the floorboards polished, and it was just absolutely lovely. And we moved in, and the first day we moved in, the boys got out their trucks and they went all across the floorboards with their little trucks and scratched them all. And I remember looking at it and thinking, now I could get really upset, but it's our first day in this new home. The boys are so happy and so excited. So I decided to love those scratches. And, you know, life can be like this sometimes, can't it? Where we have an idea about how something should be or how it should go, and then it doesn't quite match up. And it's always very interesting to observe how we are when that happens. Very, very interesting self-observation always. I'll click unmute for you there, Colette. And then you'll probably have to do it at your end.
We're unmuted here.
Yep, you're unmuted now.
Unmuted. Okay, so I think it's along those same lines, Soraya, of impermanence. That you know, your beautiful floorboards and the boys come with their trucks and it changes and you know, you get to love it as well. I'm very aware of that at the moment of first of all, just with nature and with how things are, everything is changing, and you know, staying with not knowing on the outside, but also on the inside. We had my brother and his wife come for the weekend. They come once a year, and it's a big occasion because we haven't seen them for a year, and there's a lot of preparation, and we make it special. And just about an hour before they came, I was going down just 2 steps somewhere, and I just turned on my ankle, and I ended up with my face sort of, my hands on a wall and my nose almost on the wall. And I thought, just what is in your face right now? What are you so looking at? And I picked myself up and said, you know, you have to slow, you have to stop. This is not important. Whatever you've done is enough. So the ankle has been, well, it's been a reminder, but there's so much of that going on, of things that, you know, and they've gone. They went yesterday and it was lovely, but it's done, it's over. Everything changes, everything passes. What's the fuss about? And this morning, Sebastian made some lovely toast with cheese and honey, and I was eating it, and some of the honey, as honey does, dribbled all down. And I thought, oh no. And I thought, well, this happens too. Everything changes. So I feel deeply connected with that, and also just trying to stay in alignment with it as things arise, being able to stay with in that moment rather than afterwards being able to make sense of it. It's staying with it as it happens. But the incident with the ankle and the wall, I mean, it was so in my face. Just one other thing that I wanted to tell you, actually, from actually a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to our grandson, and I said to him, Michael, what's the best thing about everything that's going on right now? And he said to me, well, Grandma, the best thing is that I can just be myself. And I said, Michael, that is the most wonderful thing. I can't believe your wisdom and how lovely that is. That happened some time back, but I had wanted to tell you that I can just be myself. So, yeah.
Thank you. And yes, that is exactly what I was sharing that story for. Because, that saying, the best laid plans by mice and men, it's very important for us, particularly when we realize that I am not a separate individual in consciousness, in the ground of being. Everything just is. There is isness. And there is a flow through. We, of course, as separate entities, are cut off from that stream of peaceful presence and love, and identifying with, as a separate self, with a separate set of beliefs and a separate history, are living in a confined, it seems, mental bubble of our own making. But the self that's made that is the actor on the stage that's forgotten that this is just the stage of life, and who we truly are is love, is consciousness. And if we can remember that, then we could never do any harm, because we would be vibrating as peaceful presence, as love, and consciously as that, rather than trying to identify completely as a separate entity when no separate entity actually exists. It's deeply profound, isn't it? But when we are expressing and enjoying this whole gift of life, while knowing who we truly are, then it's just such a beautiful unfolding. And even the honey on the jumper, oh great, I get a chance to suck my jumper. What delight. There's delight in the smallest things then, because nothing's wrong. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Ish? Go ahead.
Hi. Yes. I love the way you started this the meditation aspect of this morning with the joints, because it's so spot on for me. You're so much in tune with us that all this DIY is really taking a toll on my joints. Lifting heavy ladders and climbing and bending, and my back, my knees. I've been suffering, and I've forgotten. It's great that you softened my joints today. It really has helped. Yes, that's very spot on. So intuitive of what's going on. Brilliant. And the other thing I wanted to ask or sound out is that this morning when I woke up, and up until middle of this session, I've had kind of apprehension, some kind of feeling. I get this every now and then. I get feeling of slight doom or something. And usually, when something major is taking place, a disaster, earthquake or something, And now and then I get feelings that my brother or my daughter's feeling. And I'm never quite sure it's me or them going through what it is. So that quite often happens, actually. Yeah, it's quite intriguing when that happens. And so I just wanted to see if there's any pointers you have on that front. How I can, I don't know, I know it's good to isolate and become a part of what's going on and that, but it's not, I don't know, a bit confused there. Clear that for me, please.
We'll see what comes.
It's almost like it's like sensing, but I'm not sure whether I'm sensing something out there or whether it's just me feeling fearful.
And I think the key to that ish really is simply observing, because the mind wants to label things. It wants to know what something is. It's always wanting to know. That's just the nature of the mind, you know. And I think it's important sometimes to simply, like today, I've had this most strange day with my energy as well. It's been a very strange day living in this body today. And all sorts of feelings and physical sensations have been moving through the body.
Oh.
And I simply observe that. I keenly observe that. But I also notice today that there was no understanding today of what was happening in this body. No knowledge. I couldn't say it's because I have this or have that or something's happening, which is what I think you're sharing. So I simply observe the body all day, just notice certain sensations in my stomach. I notice certain sensations in my head. There was very interesting sensations going through this body today. But it didn't lessen my appreciation of the day. We went for a beautiful walk in nature, and I did some work in the garden and a little this and a little that, and just stayed open and present and noticing. And then I always notice that when this is like this, it passes. Or sometimes it might intensify for a little while before it passes. But it too will pass. And I really don't give it that much attention. Otherwise, the mind will come in and start worrying, or, you know, it'll go, oh, when I felt this another time, this happened, and da-da-da.
Yeah, all the hooks come out, don't they?
All the brambles.
Brambles come back, yes. Absolutely. I think you're right there. I think that actually is very insightful. I think that's a nice tool to have. Just observe, not let the hooks come out. One thing I like to share, actually, that's helped me recently, is that quite often when you have, you know, kind of like you're talking about wiping dishes and tuning in, we have lots of time in the day when there's nothing that we have to be part of. It's like when you just walk into town to do shopping. During that period of 10 minutes, we don't have to kind of think of everything that's going on or repeat what's going on or plan things. It's 10 minutes that we're going to spend. And I think it's great to spend those 10 minutes just being completely unified or in state of love. Just reminding myself those 10 minutes, stop thinking about everything else, but just be. Or 5 minutes here and there, 5 minutes there. When you're waiting for someone or something, you don't have to keep thinking when they're coming or not coming, or what's going on. You switch off for those minutes until they arrive and just get into the space of inner being, or with oneness. And that's come to me recently, when there's lots of times when it's wasted time thinking about things and working out things which you've already worked out, thought of. Repetition goes on. And it's helped me a lot in the last 2 or 3 weeks to just be in much more inner peaceful state and at oneness. So I want to share that too.
I'll tell you a secret, Ish. I've given up thinking. Thinking seems to happen. Thoughts arise. But it's very, very rarely that, you know, I go, I'm going, because we have these funny little sayings, don't we? I'll think about that. But do we think about that, or do thoughts arise and then we jump on those particular thought carriages? Contemplate on that. Because when the vrittis, when the patterns of the mind are lessened, and in yoga they say yogas chitta vritti nirod. When the vrittis, when the patterns of the mind cease, then the mind is still, and the mind becomes like a still pool or a still lake, and it reflects everything as it is. It's the perfect healing mirror. And this is the state where, in that reflection of what is, then that ground of being is perfectly reflected. There is just one thing going on. The mental fluctuations have ceased, and there is that one frequency, which is that frequency of peace, that frequency of love. And in that, it doesn't matter what we're doing, then there is just an openness to presence. For instance, when we love to walk in nature, and almost every day we walk in nature, and, you know, for an hour perhaps or more. And during that time, Terry and I often go together. It's rare that we speak. We usually walk in silence. So it was interesting being away for 6 days and then coming back, and because we can be together for hours and hours and hours and rarely speak unless it's necessary. And there's just an openness there, which is very peaceful and very relaxed. But unfortunately, what occurs in most relationships is when there's a prolonged silence, it creates disturbance, because people are very often used to filling the gap of silence with words, and often just trifle, you know, nothing particularly profound. And often, if you're just with people in silence, and notice that for ourselves, sometimes, are we comfortable with that, or are we uncomfortable with that? Usually, if we've lived with someone for a period of time and there's a sense of comfort in their energy field, we can be with them in greater silence. But can we be with people we don't particularly know and just allow there to be silence? It's very, very interesting to observe that as well, because the more turbulence in the mind, the more ripples in the mind, the more vrittis that are active, then a greater discomfort will come with silence. So making friends with silence, making friends with that emptiness. Because ultimately, the ground of being is like the void. It is empty, yet it is full. You know, there's that beautiful mantra, Om Purnamidam. I don't know if that was a question of yours or not sure where that came from, but
yeah, that fits perfect. That's really as settler ripples. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Again. This archway that we made is based on the Japanese gate, which is called a torii. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I'm just going to pick up the camera and show you a picture on the screen. I don't know if you can see it. This is our new gate. Can you see that? There. And see there's an inscription on the middle. It says in Greek, Gnothi Sauton. And that means know thyself. And this gate in Japan is literally planted in the middle of nowhere, all over the place. Sometimes in a river, sometimes in a forest. And it literally symbolizes the entrance to sacred ground. And let's come back in here. So we had this idea to put this gate here because everywhere is sacred ground, and no matter whether you're going in or out, you're always entering sacred ground because everything is sacred, everything. And the words Gnothi Sauton, they were written above the entrance to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, which was the home of the oracle. And I was there a few times. In fact, Soraya and I have also been there. And if you really look at that phrase, and also it helps with the gate, know thyself. It's not like know is a verb. It's almost like that saying, welcome to yourself. Here you are. This is you. Everything is you. And it's a wonderful reminder that wherever we go, we're walking through ourself. So, I think last time I was talking a bit about the fear of death being the bottom line to what creates resistance. I'll just move that microphone a bit. And I was asked to write the music for a program or a series about Carlos Castaneda and his apprenticeship to a sorcerer in South America called Don Juan. And the episode we've been working on is called The Journey to Ixtlan. And Ixtlan is a place that is everywhere, really. And one of his pieces of advice he gives to Carlos Castaneda is to carry death as your advisor. Always carry death as your advisor with you, because we have many ways of avoiding looking at this death. You know, we put it off into the future. Oh, I'll be so old I won't care when I'm 85 or 90 or something. That's way in the distance. Forget about that. I'll think about that some other time. Or we say, well, actually, death's not such a bad thing. I mean, there's plenty of stories of survival after death, and, you know, there's heaven and all that sort of stuff. And that's another compensation, another way of really trying to dress it up. But the other piece of advice he gives him is losing self-importance. And that actually becomes much easier as you get older, because nobody's really interested in you when you're old. Not particularly, except the grandchildren. And as we get older, we're forced to look at death. We're forced to, because it's looming. And if we really ask ourselves, what is death? Death is an idea. Whatever our idea of death is something that we've created with our knowledge and our experience. Death could be seen as the ending of time. The relaxation into presence, where everything happens in the eternal moment, and that can only happen when there has been death, and that death is of the separate self. That separate self has always been dead, and so we spend our lifetime trying to work out how to achieve this awareness of the present moment. And somehow or other we have to give up trying and realize that the word futility is really powerful, actually, because we seem to be here just to watch the show. We don't have any control. Nothing we do has any effect whatsoever upon what happens. We can observe this because, like Soraya said, many of the plans of mice and men going after clay. There's many a slip twixt cup and lip, all that sort of stuff. We make plans, we try to control our lives. We desperately try to be the ones who decide what's happening, but in this present moment, we have there's nothing to decide. It just happens. So when we walk through this gate, it's actually the gateless gate. We call it the gateless gate, which is quite nice because it's just there's no way in and there's no way out. It's the same inside and outside. There's really no entrance or exit. So I'm seeing these words, know thyself, very differently, because it's like saying, here you are, there you are, this is you. Remember who you are. It's just, I can understand why the ancient Greeks put that above the doorway in Delphi, because it really is the bottom line. Know thyself. Gnoti sauton. I think I pronounced that roughly right. Okay, that's all I have to say for now. This evening, this morning.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, in Vedanta, they talk about the gateless gate. And that Advaita, or the non-dual path, is the pathless, is pathless. So it's the gateless gate, and it's the way without a path. Because we're already here. We are, in essence, the one thing. Non-duality means one, not two. And when we tune in to that subtle yet all-encompassing ground of being, that one field of peaceful presence or love, which we can do at any time, anywhere. It's just a little adjustment of the dial, a dropping of the Vrittis of the mind, letting go of the need to know and think, letting go of the belief that we are the thinker, letting go of any sense of me as a separate self. And it's not so difficult to tune into that beautiful field. And I can understand why the instructions were given to be still and know. It's not the physical stillness, it's the mental stillness, which allows then emotional stillness. Initially, of course, physical stillness can help because it allows relaxation. We hold resistance within our body and the energy field of the physicality of the body. And I sometimes like to see this universe like an incredible spider web. There is sacred geometry existing in the underlying stratum And when there's blockages in the flow of energy within that sacred geometry, which we can experience in the physicality, it's much harder to tune in to the field of love and peaceful presence. So this is where practices like meditation can be very useful. Relaxation. So there's a relaxation of the physical and a relaxation of the mental, which we do put so much emphasis on, don't we? Activating the mental and activating the physical. And when they're overactive, to tune in to the ground of being is impossible, because we're absolutely and totally invested in the separate pattern self. So yes, to be still and know thyself. Wise words indeed. And that brings us to the end of our satsang. So it's only
there's just one thing that Soraya and I have been talking about recently, which is it's a sort of practice, but it's quite useful, because every morning we're born. Every morning we're born, we know nothing until we open our eyes and the whole mechanics of thinking start up. And every night we die. We go completely unconscious. And it's only the fact that we think we're going to wake up that makes that okay. Yeah, right. Try going to sleep thinking, well, this is it. That's it. That's the end. I'm dying. This is my death. And then when you wake up, you're born. It's quite an interesting way of living. Just take each day completely as a lifetime. It's a wonderful thing if you can do that. It works. It works for us. Yeah.
We're rehearsing for death and allowing ourselves to be born fresh every day. Namaste.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Join me for upcoming podcasts. And please, if you found this helpful, or you'd like to share a comment, or perhaps your own experience, I'd love for you to leave that message down below this podcast. I enjoy reading your feedback, and I'm sure we can all help each other to hold hands, to remain awake, present, clear, and loving. Namaste.